Hi there, this is David Wills with TED-IELTS. Today I'm going to be helping you with your IELTS reading skills, and in particular we're going to do some IELTS reading practice together. First of all though, this reading practice that we're going to do today, it actually comes from another website that I run, which is IELTSteaching.com. This website, as the name suggests, is actually for teachers rather than the people who are taking the IELTS test. But I recently posted this article, and it contains something that will be useful for IELTS students or IELTS candidates. Here, embedded in the article, it is a Google document, and it is a free IELTS reading activity. So you can see there is a passage, a reading passage, and after it you have some questions. These questions are the sort of things you may be asked in your IELTS reading test. At the bottom there you can see the answers, but let's not look at them just yet. So this article was not written by me. It was taken from a publication called The Atlantic. You can see that here. This is the original. It's a new article, and it's quite interesting. It's about something that's in the news at the moment. This guy here, Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter, and it's all about digital advertising. So we're going to look at this article here. I'm going to put it on the left of my screen. And we're going to scroll through it together, and then we're going to look at the questions on the right of the screen. So there are different ways that we can do this. What I'm going to do now is go through the questions with you and show you where to find the answers and talk about why the answers are correct. But if you would prefer to do this, you can pause the video, you can go and read the whole passage yourself, and then you can come back and we can look at the answers together. But it's up to you. This is not an authentic IELTS reading test. This is just a series of questions that are based upon the IELTS reading test. You can see we have 3 questions here, then 4 questions and 3 questions. So that's obviously not authentic style, but the questions themselves are pretty similar. We've got the multiple choice question, which is very, very common. You're basically guaranteed to get this in your test. We have true, false, or not given, which are also very common, and sentence completion, which I think are quite difficult questions. So we're going to look at them. So for multiple choice questions, we're going to do the style that asks you just to pick 1 out of 4 possible answers. And we're going to look at these first. First of all, when you come to an IELTS reading passage, I think it's the best thing to do is to read through it very fast. So here you look at the title, maybe you look at some subtitles if you have. I've just written this article has been modified. Actually, I didn't change anything, but I did reduce its length, so it's now about 1,000 words. There we go, 1,240 if you include the questions at the end. So it's about the same length as an IELTS reading passage. So when you first get this, you probably want to read through it very quickly. This is 2 pages of A4 paper. And that will give you an idea of what it's about. But you shouldn't waste too much time. You shouldn't worry about difficult vocabulary. When you come to things like this, anti-hero, you don't have to know what that means, or words like reviled maybe are unfamiliar to you. But instead, you should look at repeated words and phrases. So here we can see political ads or digital political ads, and we've got political campaigns, digital ads, and we can see that is repeated all the way throughout here. So again, we've got ad sales and political campaign. So we can immediately tell from looking at this and the repetition of political ads and the word Google up in the title that this is about political ads on the internet. So we know the main idea, And you'll look through this and maybe you see things like Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, Twitter and Jack Dorsey. We can start thinking about what parts of the passage refer to what kind of questions we might have. So let's just jump into the questions now. Again, if you want to pause this video and go find the article itself, I'll put the link down below. Then you can do that and you can read it in your own time. So the first question, what is the author's former occupation? So when we look at a question like this, the thing that we need to do is start thinking about synonyms. So occupation, we could think about the word job, we could say work, or we could just have occupations like teacher, doctor, lawyer. Former means previous or in the past, or you might have grammatical constructions like used to be, and so forth. So if we look through this article, it doesn't take too long before we can find his job. So it's actually in the first part here, and we can find the author uses I. So that's a clue. When we see the author, we see I, and he says, I joined Google. Okay, so is he a politician, or was he a politician? No. Campaign manager? No. So it seems like it's going to be A, right? But actually when we read this, we come through and it says, my job was to help political campaigns. And then you start thinking, he must be a campaign manager, right? But can you do that for Google? Not really. Here we go. If we look at this whole section, to help political campaigns for Google, understand how Google's various advertising tools work. So we get a bit of a better idea here, and we can tell he was not a programmer and not a politician. It kind of seems like this one would be true, D, but there are also some ideas that tell us it's not true. Now here we've got another part that says, I worked for the company's ad sales department. So if you work in ad sales and you're helping people to understand advertising tools and you're trying to get them to spend more of their budget, then clearly you are a salesperson. So the correct answer for number 1 then is salesperson. Right, question number 2. According to the author, why is digital advertising better than traditional advertising? So the answer is found in this passage here. This is split over 2 pages, so it's a little harder to see. So we're going to be looking to find digital advertising and traditional advertising put together into the same paragraph. And we can see that here. So we've got digital political advertising and we've got traditional advertising. So we can see these words here, digital advertising and traditional advertising. We'll call them our keywords. So what can we see in this passage that matches up to this? Is there anything about being cheaper? Well, there's nothing really about being cheaper here. What about being targeted? Well, yes, we can actually see targeted here. And we've got this section, the ability to, well, basically this whole section here also means targeted. Maybe you know or maybe you don't know this word, but niche interests means some really specific thing that people are interested in. Now, you're lucky in this case because the actual word targeted appears, but sometimes if you read a little more closely, sometimes the word that appears in the text and in the question is a little misleading. So you have to read around. So there was nothing about being cheaper. Was there anything about reaching a wider audience? Well, actually, no. In this case, it's about niche interests and targeting people more closely, so it's the opposite of a wider audience. And anything but young voters? No. In fact, we kind of have the opposite. We're talking about reaching people who are older than 65. So the correct answer, and certainly the most logical one, is it is more targeted. So B. What about question number 3 then? What does the author think is a problem with digital ads? So to find that, we're going to look down to another paragraph here. So again, we're thinking about the author's opinion, so we're looking for we're looking for anything that signals his ideas. So a problem with digital ads, so again, we're going to be looking for this word, digital ads, and anything that relates to a problem. So any sort of negative language, we might see the word problem, or we might read things like not so good or not so great, anything casting doubt. So first of all, here we've got our introduction. One can fairly ask whether we should sell policies the same way we sell sneakers and razors. So then this gets expanded and developed, and we come down to the idea of complex, thorny topics, and then we've got the controversial issues of abortion and immigration. And we've got this idea here, a feature, not a bug. Now, a bug is something bad that we have in software, and it's something that people try to solve. Then we finally come to this last paragraph, this last sentence here. When digital ads tell us what we want to hear about these subjects, they nudge us away from considering nuances, ambiguities, and alternative points of view. This kind of sums up what was said previously. So it is telling us that there's a problem here, but what problem is it? Is it about complex issues becoming too simple? About fact-checking? About being too expensive? About only being seen by a few people? Well, this idea about being too expensive, we actually have other parts in this text, the previous paragraph, for example, the opposite. They're cheaper. They're allowing people to be able to afford things that they wouldn't normally be able to afford. Fact-checking, that's not really raised here, although it appears in other parts of the text. And they're only seen by a few people? No. Well, as we saw in the paragraph we examined above, actually you can reach lots of people very effectively. Our answer here is that they make complex issues seem too simple. So we had the word complex here, and thorny, which means difficult and also complex, and topics. And then we had the examples of abortion and immigration, and the idea that they can be debated. But what this paragraph is trying to tell us is that digital ads are making them sound too simple. They are telling us what we want to hear about these subjects, and they stop us from considering these 3 things. Now, maybe the vocabulary here is difficult. Nuance means something subtle, something that's not easy to see. Ambiguities, things that are not certain. And alternative points of view, I'm sure you know, something different to what you would otherwise think. So a complex issue, something that's very difficult, is now being reduced to something that seems so easy. So that would be our answer. And we know it is definitely not B, C, or D. Right, let's move on to the true, false, or not given questions that we have next. Now, in your IELTS test, the questions are going to come in the order that they appear in the text. And we saw that there 1, 2, and 3 were first, second, and third. But I'm going to go back because this is a separate set of questions and start again. So first of all, Facebook fact-checks all the political adverts it sells. Is this true or false? So we have to look through this text till we can find the word Facebook. And that actually, you might remember, appeared at the beginning. It appeared in paragraph 2. We can see Mark Zuckerberg here, and we can see Facebook. So if you know Mark Zuckerberg, he is the CEO of Facebook and the founder. So we have to find this first, and then we can slow down and read more carefully. We can see then Mark Zuckerberg's decision to exempt all political ads from fact-checking. What does that mean, exempt? Well, we can guess from context that it means to stop fact-checking political ads. Now, we might recognize the word exempt. We might look at the EX part at the beginning and think, okay, that's a negative construction. Or we might say in the next sentence, Twitter did the opposite by banning political ads. Mark Zuckerberg is not banning them. In fact, he is not even fact-checking them. So, does Facebook fact-check all of these political ads? No, it does not. This is false. Number 2, the author disagrees with Twitter's ban on political advertising. Right. So we can see here in the next sentence, Twitter has banned advertising, or political advertising. We could say there, so he announced that ban on political advertising. So what then is the author's opinion about this? Could we see anything here? No. His opinion is in the next sentence. So he says, I suspect. That means I think or I believe. So the rest of this sentence will tell us the answer, that Twitter's decision, or Jack Dorsey, who is the founder and CEO of Twitter, will prove myopic, counterproductive, and ultimately untenable. So some difficult words there. Myopic means short-sighted, and untenable means something that we cannot continue to do. So those are the words that we would have to try and figure out or guess if we can, but otherwise probably counterproductive. So what could that mean? Well, it means the opposite of productive. And if productive is a good thing, counterproductive is a bad thing. If you can't figure out that, then let's look at the next part. I hope Zuckerberg, that's Facebook's boss, and Google's Sundar Pichai don't follow his lead, meaning he hopes that they don't do this. The author disagrees with Twitter's ban on advertising. True, yes, he disagrees with it. Next, Twitter makes more money than Facebook from advertising. So we've got to try and find the next section that talks about money. Well, we can see here we've got marketing budget. This will be the place that we start to look. We can also try to find Twitter and Facebook in the same section, and we can see them here, so that's useful. Right, so we're next going to find this question here. Twitter makes more money than Facebook from advertising. So we need to find somewhere in the text that talks about money and talks about Facebook and Twitter. We can find marketing budgets here, but this is not the right part. If we look a little further more, we can see this phrase here, Twitter's revenue. And then soon after we can see Facebook and several $100 million. So it's safe to assume that this is the right part. We've got Twitter, we've got Facebook, we've got money, and of course there's reference to advertising we can see up here. So we have to read a little more carefully. Political ads account for only about $3 million a year of Twitter's revenue. Okay, so Twitter makes more money than Facebook. Does Facebook make more money? By comparison, Facebook expects to make several $100 million in the 2020 election cycle. So it seems like yes, right? This is true. So several $100 million is more than $3 million. But there are two things really that are going to cast this into doubt. Firstly, Twitter's profits or revenue is in the present tense, and Facebook's is in the future tense. So we don't know 100%. I mean, it's pretty obvious, yes, they do make more than Twitter, but we don't know for sure. But another part is this phrase, political ads. So the question talks about advertising. So companies like Nike and McDonald's advertise a lot on these platforms, but they're not political. In this sentence, or these sentences, we're just talking about political ads. So political ads are not the same as all forms of advertising, so we can only say here, not given. Finally, the author thinks that digital advertising uses similar methods to traditional advertising. So where can we find this then? If we scroll down further on, then we can find some language that suggests down here that we are comparing one form of advertising to another. So first of all, let's think about the keywords. So we're looking for traditional advertising and we're looking for digital advertising. Can we find these together? Yes. So, whoops, there we go. Traditional and digital advertising. And then we've got differences. We read this first sentence and it'll pretty much tell us the answer, but we'll look further to confirm that. The differences between traditional and digital advertising are differences in degree, not in kind. This means basically not in kind. It means there are not significant differences. It's just a difference of how much something differs. Let's look further to confirm that. So he gives examples. Campaigns have used micro-targeted direct mail for decades, so for a long time. Then TV advertising gets more targeted all the time. So we're talking about direct mail, we're talking about TV. These are two kinds of traditional advertising. Then again, we've got traditional pay TV. What we're saying through all of this is that they're using the same or similar methods of targeting people as modern digital advertising. So our answer here then is going to be true. There we go. Right, we come to the final section now, which is sentence completion. You have to read this carefully. In this case, it's going to say 2 words or a number. Sometimes it'll say 2 words and or a number, which implies that there's a number in addition to the words. Or sometimes it'll say 1 word or 3 words. You have to read carefully and don't go over. So the first one then, the author left his digital job so he could go to, well, we've got to go back to the beginning now because we're doing this in order. So this will be first, second, and third. So where did we talk about the author working? You'll remember we dealt with this up in question number 1. So that was in this paragraph, yes. So I joined Google. So the author left his digital ad job so he could go to what? Well, he was working for Google and he says here, I left, let's highlight that. I left before the height of the campaign to attend graduate school. So the author left his digital job so he could go to graduate school, right? So he could go to graduate school. So we've got 2 words there. Why do we not say attend graduate school? Well, firstly, attend means the same as go to. Secondly, we cannot put those together. We can't say go to attend graduate school. That doesn't grammatically make sense. And of course, we can only use 2 words. Our next answer is going to come pretty quick after. He assisted blank in understanding digital advertising. We can look here, digital advertising, and we can see this word help, which has the same meaning as assisted. And so our answer here, I'll just copy and paste, is political campaigns. So he assisted political campaigns in understanding digital advertising. So we can see there help, that means assisted. We can see digital advertising. And we can see the word understand there and understand advertising tools. So we can see the answer must be political campaigns. Finally, Google views political campaigns like a blank such as Coke or Pepsi. So let's scan through for the rare words. So we've got Google and we know that we're still in the same paragraph then. Political campaigns, okay, but that's too common in this essay. So we'll look for the words Coke or Pepsi and we can see that down here. So this directs our attention. So what is an example, or what are Coke and Pepsi an example of? So if we look around here, then we can see other ideas. Are Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton like Coke and Pepsi? Well, they're compared, but Coke and Pepsi are not an example of them. Now, our actual answer is big brand, because what else here are Coke and Pepsi an example of? Are Coke and Pepsi a political campaign? No. Are they tech companies? No. Are they a generation? No. So the only thing that they could be an example of are big brands, or are a big brand. So such as means an example of, so big brand, those are something that include Coke and Pepsi. If we look back, we can see then, to tech companies, a political campaign is just another big brand. So Google, which is a tech company, views means is, or to see as, political campaigns, we can see here, and big brand. Right, so hopefully this has been helpful for you, and you will be able to look at your next IELTS reading passage and figure out multiple choice questions, true, false, not given questions, and sentence completion a little easier. This is something that takes practice, but from what I've just shown you, you can see that you don't need to understand all the words. You just need those skills to find the right part of the text and to narrow down the answers. You're not always going to know it's 100% A, B, or C, but maybe you know it's definitely not D, for example, and you can give yourself a better chance of finding the right one. Okay, that's enough for today. Hopefully this has been very useful for you. If it has, please give this video a like and check my website for more useful IELTS advice. I've been David Wills. This is TED-IELTS. I'll see you next time.